17th. And any pecuniary interest by anybody today? Okay, Robert. And which item is that? Number?
Mr. Chair, my conflict is item 4.6.
4.6, okay.
The Lions Club
Okay.
presentation, and I would like to remove myself from the chambers while you're discussing it all together.
Anyone else? Okay, before we do our first application, anyone that is going to be speaking today, there's a form on the desk up here. You sign in before you speak, and you will be limited to the length of time that you will be speaking. So we ask you to be brief if you wish to comment on any of the items. So we will proceed with our first application, and it's an application for a minor variance, A1123 6 Porter Avenue. The owner is Zandbergen Properties, Inc. And Andrew?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So the property is located on the north side of Porter Avenue, east of Bertram Boulevard, and south of Hyde Park Avenue. The subject land is developed with a non-conforming detached garage and is under construction for an accessory dwelling unit through a building permit. This application proposes to recognize existing side and rear yard setbacks to facilitate another accessory dwelling unit. Current zoning provisions would require 1 meter for a regular accessory building for setback and 1.2 meters for a detached accessory building for an accessory dwelling unit. But the building is existing, and they wish to use the existing building stock for the proposed use. As such, the application proposes to recognize the existing setbacks that currently exist. The official plan designation of the property is residential land use. At this time, staff have received correspondence from 5 members of the public in opposition of this application. They have been included in my report to the committee, as well as circulated to the committee members for your consideration. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from Zandbergen Properties? Do you want to? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Scott Zandbergen.
Is the mic on? The red light on? Hit the button.
Is that good?
Yep.
Hi. So I'm Scott Zandbergen. I'm the owner, along with my wife, Kim, of Zandbergen Properties Incorporated.
Okay. Do you have any additional questions, comments?
No, I'm just happy to field any questions about the project. I should say that we've been doing accessory dwelling units in Belleville for a couple of years. This will be our 9th that we are constructing, and we've done about 25 in other parts of the province.
Okay. Joe, did you have a question? Oh, anybody have any questions for this gentleman? Okay, so you're converting the garage into a residential unit, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Jack?
The garage, I actually went out and looked at this one, and if I understand it right, that the eave trough on the garage is overhanging the other property. It would not be on your property, is that correct?
That was pointed out, I saw in one of the comments, and so that is something that we will have to address. That should be a relatively minor change for us to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We may have some more questions in a minute, but is there anyone else wishes to comment on 6 Porter Avenue? Do you want to come forward, sign your name there, and let us know who you are? And okay,
Chair, committee members, I'm Stephen Martin. I'm the owner of 77 Bertram, along with my wife, Marjorie Brady, which this garage is quite close to the property line, as you can see. First of all, I've got to refute the planning department's comment that this is good planning. I have to refute, too, that it's a minor impact to the neighbourhood and to the community and to the neighbouring property. Okay? The existing dwelling, a 2-story brick dwelling, the applicant has converted the basement into a separate dwelling unit, which is fine. I'm okay with that. My wife is okay with that too. I can't speak to the other people in the neighbourhood. With respect to the garage, it's a 50-year-old garage. It's a garage. It's a garage. Nothing more, nothing less. It hasn't been anything else but a garage. Now, according to the official plan, is that you're allowed to have one unit, I'm going to take that as a building, per 500 square meters. This garage will actually become a detached bungalow, not a garage, if this application moves forward. Therefore, you have two buildings. It doesn't work. It's not a 1,000 square meter lot. It's just slightly over 500 square meters. So that's my first issue. The second issue too is there's going to be more expense to the city with sewage, water, garbage, you name it, recycling. There's going to be more complaints, well, they've gone, I'm quite sure, to potential complaints to the bylaw officers about what's going on with respect to the property too. I know we need housing, but this is not a property to put another house on. This is not a property to put another house on. That's quite clear given what the area is. Also the amenities that would, for any particular occupant of the garage, they're going to be sharing just a portion of the backyard because the applicant has already subdivided the backyard by a privacy fence. So the occupant of the ground, or I guess the main part of the existing building, house, they have access to that part of the rear yard. I'll make the rash assumption is that the occupant of the basement, the new basement unit in the existing dwelling, and any potential occupant of the garage will be sharing the other part, which is only about, I think I have a measurement here. It's about 15 feet by 32 feet of backyard space to be shared. You can't count the driveway. There's going to be 3 cars parked in that driveway. That's what the minimum is. I've been told that by the planning department. You only need 1 parking space per residential unit. We, of course, know that that's not going to happen. There's going to be more cars connected with that property than 3. Another thing we have to keep in mind too is that Loyalist College is actively engaged in bringing in thousands of overseas students every year into Belleville. There is no place for those students. And what's going to happen, and we've seen it, that there's several students in one room, or several students in one house. There's no restriction happening. That's just my own feeling on that. There's always that potential. Okay. So, as I said, I don't think it's a minor issue, and I don't think it's good planning. I don't see how you can have a bungalow and a detached 2-story home on a small lot. It just doesn't work. You want to have that throughout your city? You want to turn Belleville into a shanty town? I think not.
Where do you live in relation to this building?
Where do I live?
Yeah.
Well, I bought 77 Bertram. I just bought it.
So you live on Bertram?
I live yes.
So is it back onto this property?
It does, yes.
Okay, I just
Sorry.
wanted to be clear. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure where you were located in relation to
Yeah.
this. Okay.
So,
Right,
thank you.
okay. Maybe Andrew, you can explain, just so for understanding, that the fact that they can have these 3 units on the, potential for 3 units on the property?
Sure. In 2019, the City of Belleville adopted the second unit policy, which is the former name of the current accessory dwelling unit policy, which allowed for 1 accessory dwelling unit, which is currently under construction. The province had, through Bill 23, and as explained in my report, permitted a second accessory dwelling unit for a total of 3. And within those provisions, staff are municipalities are unable to actually require more than one parking space per accessory dwelling unit, and that's why only 3 are required by zoning. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to comment on Porter? Yes, Jack, go ahead. Somebody,
Speak out loud. Is there a square footage for the third unit? How big is the square footage? Is there an absolute 500 square feet, 1,000?
So there are limitations on floor area, and I'm not recalling the specific floor area of this one, but in general, the 2 smaller units cannot exceed the size of the largest one. So for example, if 1,000 square foot house could have 2 500 square foot accessory units.
847 square feet is, sorry.
580 square feet is what the garage is.
Okay, so it's smaller than
the other 2,
They would still need to comply with all the other provisions of the accessory dwelling unit
and the
policy.
building permit, et cetera, yep. Okay. You wish to comment on Porter?
Hi, I'm Mary Miracle. I live, Stephen lives, that's the driveway beside the garage is Stephen's property, and I live on the other side. I'm concerned that it's a 6-car parking driveway, that there will be 6 cars in there, and that if they have company or parties, the street is going to be filled with cars. There are some children that live down the street from there, and the whole road, it's a very short street. It's a very short street. So if they have 6 cars in that driveway and then company, then it's going to overload. My backyard, my garage and then my driveway, is along the fence at the back. So if you have 3 families back there partying or having barbecues and everything else, that's going to infringe on my privacy because all those people will be back there. I'm under the understanding that the windows, if I can, am I allowed to speak about another neighbor or no? Okay, that's a no?
Well,
Okay.
what's your comment?
I'm concerned about the windows that are going to be added onto this property. Back windows, side windows.
There are no windows being added.
So there's no windows added to the property at all?
Just to the front and the side facing the.
Okay. So I'm concerned about the noise level. I'm concerned about the cars. And I don't know a whole lot about minor variances, but if a building is right on or some way over, then the building shouldn't be made into an apartment. So I'm concerned about those things.
The building already exists where it is.
Yes,
We can't move that.
yes, you can cut a piece off. So does this gentleman have the option to deny a minor variance? I'm just asking, or it doesn't really matter? Just for my own information.
Andrew?
There we go. So how this works is that staff make a recommendation based off of the information provided at the time, based off of what has been applied for and what's been received, and then present it to the committee. The committee is allowed to make a decision based off of what they hear from staff and the public.
Okay,
There are appeal rights, but Bill 23 or Bill 109 that removed the appeals for the public, which the province so graciously did. So the owner has the right to appeal the decision, but this is why we have the public process to get all these information out and to the consideration of the committee.
okay. So can I ask you when the permit was put in to change the garage into a home, into an apartment?
I don't believe they applied for a permit yet. Even if they did, they would not be
Okay.
issued planning approval.
Okay, because I did ask, because I heard from one of the workers, they were changing the garage into an apartment or maybe an Airbnb. That's one of my other worries. And they both said no.
A permit
So-
to the conversion into an
To
access.
convert that, and I asked them both about it, and so did my other neighbors, and they both said they weren't changing it into an apartment or anything else,
Nothing has been issued for a permit for the
Yeah.
conversion.
but,
As for the Airbnb, that is a separate process through licensing.
okay, so, same thing, if we don't want it into an Airbnb, we have to come back?
It goes through a licensing clerk at the city, and there are certain criteria they have to maintain, as well as a setback.
Okay, so if you say are they only allowed 3 cars in that 6-car driveway
So zoning has a parking requirement
Okay,
per use,
okay,
one for the main, and then one for each dwelling unit.
okay,
And the
so,
province, we can't require more than that.
okay, so if there are 6 cars in there on a permanent basis, then who do I call, you?
If it's blocking a sidewalk, I believe that is,
Excuse me? Excuse me?
sorry, I didn't mean to get distracted.
No,
Um,
she's on the phone.
Should it be blocking a sidewalk or, I know there isn't one.
So
then-
what you're saying is that 6-car driveway, they can put 6 cars in there even though they're only, I'm just trying to understand.
The requirement is only, they have to have at least 3. If you got room for 10 cars in
Okay.
there, you could put 10 cars. in
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand, that's all.
As
Yeah.
long as they're not blocking the street.
Okay, all right,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else to comment on Porter Avenue? Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, just to clarify, so it was the provincial Doug Ford and Todd Smith government that has allowed 3 units to go on a property, as well as reduced the requirement for parking. So that's ultimately the framework that we work in, what the province has forced down upon us, just so we're clear.
Yep, any single, semi, or townhouse dwelling on its own lot with municipal services can have up to 2, subject to the provisions. And the province has specifically stated we cannot require more than 1 per. So if we were to say increase it to 2, then we would be in contravention of the provincial legislation.
Now, you're talking parking?
Yes.
Well, and auxiliary units were also dealt with as well.
I do have a question. With regards to the eavesdropping that overhangs the other property, have you spoken to the individuals that own that property?
I have not yet, so I'm not even sure who that particular person is yet, but I'm happy to.
Right.
I would say, sorry? So, no, but I have not yet spoken to the individual whose property is receiving the water from the eaves trough, so we can absolutely address that. I would also just say, you know, we have in Belleville, we manage about 14 units right now that we have rentals, and we have no intention ever of renting to students, because that requires a different type of insurance, and lenders need to be aware of that. So I'd like to make sure the neighbors are aware this will not be student rental housing. Furthermore, we do a pretty decent job of making sure that we set expectations around how many cars are expected within a household. We just, for example, rented one on Bridge Street, a main floor 3-bedroom unit, and they had 0 cars because we set the expectation I had room for 1, and they came along and had no cars. That's fine too. So.
And you have another comment?
Again, this building is existing, so any encroachment is an existing factor, and I've already given advisement to the owner that they should try to get it rectified, but doesn't impact the actual application, because that's a private matter that's already a problem right now.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
As far as the decision on this property, Do we have a mover or seconder for allow, deny?
I'll move to approve.
Approved by, second by Jack. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving right along, our next application is A1223, 21 Green Lawn Avenue. The owners are Beth and John Colburn and Andrew.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The property is located on the southeast side of, the south side of Green Lawn Avenue, north of Victoria Avenue and west of Bertram Boulevard. The application proposes to reduce the required setback for an attached carport. The official plan designation of the property is residential land use, and we did, since my report, receive one letter with no objections to the application. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Just for a point, they're reducing the setback from what to what? Just
Interior side yard, and I believe it to be the northmost yard.
From 1 to .06, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, is anyone, Colburn's here? You have to sign your name there, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
When you're further back there, maybe it's I'm getting old, but you can't hear anything. I'm sorry. Anyway, our neighbors, I believe, have submitted a letter with no objection to the
That's correct, yes.
reduction, and I'm not aware of any other people complaining about it or objecting to it.
Okay.
Is there any questions about what we're
It's just a
propo-
carport, it's not enclosed, it's just a carport, it's not enclosed?
No,
Okay, all right.
I
Any
want to
questions
keep
for
the
this
snow
gentleman?
off.
Any questions? No? Anyone else that wishes to comment on 21 Green Lawn? We'll take that as a no. Joe?
No, I was just gonna move.
Okay. Moved by Joe, seconded by Robert. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, our next application, A1323, thank you, Mr. Cohen. A1323, 110 Avondale Road. The owner is Evan Mills and Andrew.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The property is located on the west side of Avondale Road, south of Aldersgate Drive, and north of Dundas Street West. The applicant proposes to reduce the required interior side yard setback for a deck, and it would be, in this case, the north yard. The official plan designation of the property is residential land use, and at this time, no correspondence from the public has been received. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is the owner of 110 Avondale Road here?
Yes, I am.
You're Evan?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you have any additional questions, comments?
No, I don't.
Okay. So how big is this deck?
So, as you can see on the picture, there's currently a deck there that's 16 feet by 12 feet. So we're taking that deck, and that's the one that's on the west side of the yard. We're gonna make that 16 feet by 15 feet, and then the yard that'll be north, so the deck that's gonna be north of the house, sorry, is going to be 14 feet, 11 inches by 16 feet. So I wanna say it's just under 240 square feet.
Okay.
It's written on that drawing.
Okay. Any questions for this gentleman? Anybody in the audience wishes to comment on Avondale Road? I guess that's no. Okay, no further comment? Moved by Jack, second by Robert. All in favor? Good, you got your deck.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Next application is A1423, 15 Symington Drive, and the owner is Catherine Slaughter. And Andrew, you,
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The property is located on the south side of Symington Drive and east of Herkimer Avenue. The application proposes to reduce the required front yard depth for a barrier-free accessibility ramp and landings. The official plan designation of the property is residential land use, and at this time, no correspondence from the public has been received. Back to you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Is Catherine Slaughter here? Oh. Just that picture is at the front of the house, correct? Okay. So basically, the step is being replaced by a ramp.
Yeah, in order to get the actual full width of the
Right,
ramp
okay.
and the turn radiuses.
Okay, do you have any questions, comments?
No.
Just that you're replacing the front step with a deck, or with a ramp, and it's a little
landing.
wider than the normal?
It's actually a landing and a ramp.
Yeah, okay. Anybody have any questions for the couple? Anybody in the audience wishing to comment on 15 Symington Drive? I'll take that as a no. Moved by Robert, seconded by Scott. All in favor? Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application is a minor variance A 1523, 52 Wright Avenue. The owner is Joshua and Candace Merrill. And Andrew?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The property is located on the west side of Wright Avenue, north of Dundas Street West, and south of Walmsley Place. The application proposes to reduce the required north interior side yard for the proposed second-story addition, and that addition would not increase the building footprint of the building. The official plan designation of the property is residential land use, and at this time, staff have received no correspondence from the public.
Okay, thank you. Is the Merrills here? There you
I'm
are.
Candace.
Okay, you're Candace, okay. Any questions, comments?
No.
So you're putting a second story on the existing building? It's not be any bigger, wider, just higher?
No, just the existing building. It's just over top of where those two windows are. But since it's going to a two-story, I need 6 feet between our property line and like the neighbors, and we're 4.5 feet.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for this lady? Anybody want to comment on 52 Wright Avenue? Take that as a no. Moved by Scott, seconded by Joe. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, our next application is, we'll call you back in a minute, is for a minor variance, A 1623, 119 Station Street, and the owner is the Lions Club of Belleville. And Andrew?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The property is located on the southwest corner of Station and Stoke Street. The application proposes to allow ramps, landings, and associated canopies for the purposes of a barrier-free entrance to be constructed and project into the full depth of the front, which is the north yard in this case. Oh, sorry about that. There you go. There you go. The building's in a non-compliant state, so there's not much front yard to work with, so they're just going to use the entire depth of the front yard. The official plan designation of the property is city center, and at this time, we have not received any correspondence from the public.
Okay, thank you. And you're representing the Lions Club area, or?
Task force
Your
engineer.
task force, okay. Is there an existing step or something there now?
Yeah, it's on the side of the building, not in that front yard.
Okay.
So they're looking to add a ramp, just maintain barrier-free accessibility, and to keep it at the required slope, we've got to come out all that ways, so.
Okay. Any questions of gentlemen? Anybody? Oh, Joe?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so the ramp will kind of consume that whole front portion?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wishes to comment on 119 Station Street? If not, moved by Jack, seconded by Joe. All in favor? Thank you. Robert, you can come back now. Okay. Moving right along, our application for consent is B 1423, 1693 Casey Road, and the owner is Clayton Fairman. And Andrew? Or Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The application proposes the creation of a new rural residential lot on the west side of the subject property, the southwest corner, actually. The property is designated rural land use under the city's official plan. The northern part is also designated environmental protection, and there's a wetland in that area. Comments have been received from Quinte Conservation, offering no objection to the application. The proposed severed and retained lots would have slightly less frontage than required under the provisions of the zoning bylaw, and thus zoning amendment to a special zone would be required for both severed and retained lots as a condition of approval. Both severed and retained lots would have larger than the minimum required lot area for rural residential use.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other lots off this property at the moment, or is this the first lot?
This is the first lot since I've owned it, to my knowledge. Like,
Okay.
I think that have I severed lots? Is that the
Is
question?
there any other lots off the original property?
No.
No, there isn't, okay. Any questions, this gentleman?
I'm just curious, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just curious what the building at the back of the property.
It's like an old dilapidated run-in for like somebody had like horses or something there prior to me purchasing the property.
Okay. Anybody else on Casey Road wants to comment on Casey Road? Okay, if you have no other comments, Jack approved it, second by Joe. All in favor? Done.
Thank you.
Okay, your next application, B 1523 395 Bell Boulevard, and the owner is Belwinder, Gil and Andrew or Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposal is to sever the south half of the property in order to create a new commercial or residential, commercial or industrial development lot. Zoning on the property is a combination of highway commercial and special industrial in that area. The south lot is approximately half the size of the property and would have frontage on the fairly recently constructed Genland Way. Water and sewer connections would be available on Genland Way. Storm drainage is provided by ditches as well in that area. The existing north half of the lot is developed with a car wash, a gas station, and a coffee shop.
Thank you. So this is the property that's behind the Esso station or whatever it is down that street, okay?
Yep.
Alrighty. Any questions, gentlemen? Anybody wish to comment on 395 Bell Boulevard?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
Yep.
Is there going to be an easement over the two parcels for traffic? Or is it going to be access only through the side road?
That's a main road, this.
It is, yeah. It would
It's
be
a street.
accessed via Genland Way there. They'd have their own driveway in. from
Okay,
there.
so no connection to the gas station?
No.
No.
Okay. Jack, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say it's Bell Boulevard at the top.
Yeah, the top is Bell Boulevard, and that's that one that comes down to a T down behind the Esso station there, okay? And nobody else wants to comment on 395 Bell Boulevard? Okay, if not, then moved by Jack, seconded by Robert, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application is, oops, I guess we're done with that. B 1623, B 1723, 152, 150 Dufferin Avenue. And Andrew, you can update us on what's happening there. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed applications contemplate the creation of a new infill residential lot using the southerly 12 meters of 152 Dufferin and the northerly 3 meters of 150 Dufferin. So the intent behind these applications is to create a lot in between the two existing houses. The area is designated as residential land use under the official plan, and the proposed lot configuration would comply with the provisions of the R2-3 zone. There is a storm sewer that runs through those properties, and as part of the consideration around this application, the city has been looking at options to see about acquiring an easement over that storm sewer. It's estimated that it was installed probably 80 to 90 years ago. And at the time, an easement was not taken. So as a result, staff is not able to provide a recommendation at this point on how to proceed with it. However, we would like to proceed with the public meeting owing to the fact that there has been some interest in the application. Staff has received comments as well expressing interest and concerns about drainage in the area, and that will also need to be further evaluated by staff.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, John.
What is the size of the sewer that's in there now? The storm sewer? Do you know?
Yeah, it's 750 millimeter in diameter, the one that comes through. It drains approximately 55 acres to the east. 55 acres to the north and east. It's not going to last long.
Is one of the owners or any of the owners here of Dufferin Avenue? So which one are you?
I'm not the landowner. We're the agent on file, Jennifer
Okay.
from Watson Land Surveyor.
Okay,
So I do
sorry.
just have a few points to
Yep,
make, if
okay.
that's okay. I just want to point out, like Greg said, these applications together propose an infill lot between 150 and 152 Dufferin. Both proposed lots are significantly currently oversized. The frontage required is 12 meters, and both of these lots have 32 meters. The area required in the R2 zone is 371 square meters. Both of these lots have over 1,835 square meters, so they're significantly oversized. Should these applications be supported in the future, all three lots, 150, the middle one that we're creating, and 152, will still be oversized. So I just wanted to make that clear. There's a couple of sections in the current official plan for the city of Belleville that mention infill lots and supporting them. I've got them listed here, but there's about 3 or 4. And we did receive the copies of the letter from city staff from the circulated neighbors. There seems to be 2 themes to them. One is drainage on Dufferin Street, and one is a periodic wet area in the back of these lots. I won't comment on the Dufferin Street drainage. I think that staff will eventually comment on that, but I do have one of the landowners here, Stephen McCurdy, who would like to comment on the periodic wet area in the back.
Okay, we'll get to that in just a second.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions for this lady? I have a question, but I think I'll wait for a minute.
Okay. None for me
Okay,
then?
thank you.
Okay.
Who else wishes to comment on Dufferin Avenue?
Hello, my name is Stephen McCurdy, and I'm the landowner at 152. Just for point of reference, I've probably lived within 50 feet of that piece of property for over 40 years. So I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. I've lived at the 134, I've lived at 150, and I now own but not live at 152. So I'm very familiar with what happens on that street and have been for over 40 years. There seems to be, there's 2 sort of themes with the letters that we received, that was received from the neighbors. And one is the water that comes down to the front of the property, which is down the street, on the road to the sewer that then runs through the storm sewer. From time to time throughout the year, we'll have a heavy rainstorm. A lot of water gets collected down at the bottom, and that water does back up from time to time because the sewer is blocked slightly. Very rarely is it due to volume, but it does happen, and in those times, sometimes it'll flow over the sidewalk and onto the property at 152. It's a temporary issue during the summertime, not a big hassle. So I think the issue related to drainage of the whole street through coming down into the area in front of the property is somewhat irrelevant to the application. At the back of the property, there's always been a flow of water, which happens probably late spring or in the spring when the snow starts to melt. And most of the neighbors have created sort of a trough in the back of the property, including at 152. which then helps the water flow back to the area at the very back of the property, probably within 10 feet of the back of the lot. At 152, there's an area of less, 6 feet by 6 feet where the water might collect for a short period of time in the spring. It eventually evaporates. When we first purchased the property, and one of the reasons we did was it was a beautiful wooded lot. Unfortunately, due to the ash borer beetle, they were all ash trees, and there was a reference of 60 trees being removed in one of the letters, but in fact, there was about 16 trees removed from that lot itself. There was about 10 or 15 or 10 from the lot next to it, and then there were 3 or 4 on lot at 134. So there was approximately 30 trees removed from the backyards just because they were all dead. We would never have wanted to do that, and then once the trees were gone, then it became obvious that the probably best next use of this property was to add to the neighborhood and include a house. So I think there is a lot of reference in the letters too about the area being wet. The property has been as it is for 80 years since there's been any sort of swamp or anything there. Definitely low areas, but I think they're easily dealt with drainage and minor drainage to make sure the water flows naturally where it wants to. So,
Any questions, this gentleman?
Yes, Steve. At the westerly end, southwest corner, is there a drain into the storm sewer?
On the property at 134 Dufferin, there is, and that is the only one. So at the road in front of 152,
Yes.
there's a circular manhole. It flows direct on an angle directly across the 3 properties, 152, 150, and 134. At the back of 134, where it takes a 45-degree angle straight across the back onto Bleecker, there is an open sewer, graded sewer there, where water from surface drain could come into that area.
Okay, so it isn't ditched to go to that sewer?
No.
No, it isn't?
No. No. The water pretty much naturally evaporates or moves when it collects there, but it collects there in the spring and sometimes during a heavy rainfall. But it's a small puddle.
And the drain on, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
The drain on Dufferin, is it overflows sometime because of?
Well, I think as mentioned, the amount of volume that sewer actually collects and has for the last 80 years is quite a bit. And it, from time to time, during some of these major rainstorms we've been having, it will back up on that street, and it flows over a little bit onto the sidewalk and then onto the lawn.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Scott?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, is there any idea of the status of this sewer pipe and the drain sewer pipe, the quality of it? Is it going to need to be replaced at some point, and is that impacted by this lot potentially?
Craig?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's something that I think in terms of any municipal infrastructure, it's important that the city acquire easement for the purpose of maintenance, and I think that's something the staff's still looking at the mechanics and the options available to us there. Ultimately, because it is a significant piece of infrastructure, it's important that the city has some way of maintaining it should it require repairs or replacement. At this point, I'm not aware of any issues with it at this point.
So this sewer pipe will cross 3 different properties, potentially?
Correct.
And there is no easement at the moment in place? Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Okay, so in order to proceed in any way, shape, or form, an easement would have to be approved for that, those lots, correct? correct?
I believe that is the case. However, like I say, staff is still discussing our options in that regard.
Okay.
Well, I
Jack?
mean, just, I think, point of clarification there, the lot at 134, if there is no application or any changes to anything on that lot, there is
Oh, it's 'cause
no
it's just a corner.
requirement for them to have an easement. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the city can force the issue, which they may or may not do in the future, but the idea of from our perspective is that with this particular piece of property, we're saying we'll abide and provide the easement on the property that we now are creating. But what the neighbors do, our neighbor to the south at 150 has not agreed to it, which is their prerogative. And then the next one down isn't really involved because that pipe, they're not involved in this severance at all. So at the end of the day, the city would only have an easement over the piece at 152.
And the new lot?
Only the new lot.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Right, and, you know, obviously, we're saying,
'Cause the
is it better
picture-
to have a bit than none, or?
The picture with the bottom one is the property that the owner is not willing
Correct.
to give an easement on,
Correct, yep.
okay? And the other top one is just near the corner, that's all. Does it go across just the corner of the property, or no?
Yes, it goes
Okay.
across just the top section corner of the proposed new lot. It goes through the middle of 150, and it goes through part of the back section of 134.
Okay, do you have any more questions for this gentleman? Okay. Okay,
With regards to the easement that was being asked for the other property owner, I see it takes about, the total easement would take maybe 25 to 30% of the house would be on that easement, correct? And this particular easement, how wide is it? Do you know?
there is no easement.
Yeah, that's correct. So the width of the easement that's being recommended is 9 meters wide, and that accounts for engineering standards around the size of the pipe and the depth of the pipe. So that's essentially that's the width that staff had recommended we should be seeking to obtain. You're right, it does take into account, I mean, it would, as shown on the sketch from Watson's, it would certainly impact on the, you know, the house and the garage, and that is,
Yeah.
that's something that would have to be considered certainly in the language that was agreed to on how it was enacted in terms of, you know, I mean, how do you deal with that, right, without affecting the house if you have to get into to work on a pipe? And so, yeah, I think that's why staff still needs to have further discussion about what to propose.
Jack, you, go ahead.
Yeah, just thinking about that, 9 meters, roughly 30 feet. So from the center line, it's going to be 15 feet either side. And the actual sewer through there, you've got 750 millimeters. And with climate change that it is, and the more rain we're getting, that sewer is going to be a problem no matter what. That's too small to cover the amount of water that's going to be coming down through there. So definitely they're going to have to do something with it. And that's going to make it very difficult for the city if this person that owns that property presently and that doesn't have an easement, you may never get an easement on that.
Is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to comment on Dufferin Avenue? Come forward, sign your name there, and
My name is Stuart Murray. I live at 131 Dufferin Avenue. I'm appearing on behalf of a number of residents who submitted a written set of comments. I'm simply here to answer any questions. I believe our submission is quite self-explanatory and outlines the concerns that all of the neighbors have in this location. So if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Through you, Chair. Maybe just for the purpose of for the broadcast and the people watching, could you just maybe just summarize it in as brief as you could? Like, what do you think the general sense is of the neighborhood?
Well, one of the primary concerns that all of the residents of Dufferin Avenue has is drainage. And that has two elements to it. One is surface drainage from rainfall and so forth. It flows down from Bridge Street, flows westerly from McDonald Avenue, all to the southwest through the subject property. That's the outlet for the entire neighborhood for surface water runoff. In addition to that, the neighborhood soil composition is glacial sand, several feet deep, under which is a layer of clay. And I believe the type of clay is called Leda clay. It's extremely slippery when it's saturated. And it is notorious in planning circles as being the type of clay you want to be very careful of when dealing with planning approvals, because it leads to unstable buildings. Underground, there's a tremendous flow of water because we are near the Bay of Quinte. There's a lot of water flowing from a very large drainage area. It saturates the sand to the point where it starts to flood into basements. This is not surface water flooding into basements, it's groundwater that is flooding basements in the neighborhood. Sump pumps are starting to run now in August. Unusual, usually the sump pumps dry out as the sand layer dries, but now with the rain we've had this summer, sump pumps are starting to run regularly again. And once we get into the wet fall, winter season, sump pumps run all season long through until things dry out in the summertime. This wet situation is very difficult for existing homeowners to deal with. Some homeowners have excavated their foundations, applied waterproofing treatment in the hope that they can stop this dampness, wetness flooding into their basements. Some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't, because the hydrostatic pressure of water against the concrete foundation is just too great because it's draining such a large area. In the case of my home, over the years, the foundation has shifted slightly. It caused a complete wall of my foundation to cave in. I had to replace it. It was very expensive. The soil is unstable in the neighborhood. We know that from historical experience. We know we have a serious drainage problem in the area. The property next door to me at 133 is now becoming flooded, not just in the rear yard, but also into the side yards and out almost to Dufferin Avenue during wet years. We have a concern that we haven't yet seen these superstorms that many other urban centers in Ontario have seen, and when we do, we're going to have a much bigger problem than what we have now. So we have that concern about drainage. We have lost so many trees in the neighborhood, both on the subject property and throughout the neighborhood. These mature trees draw up a huge amount of water, help get rid of some of that groundwater. They're all gone now. They haven't been replaced. Homeowners can't afford to replace 20, 30 trees on their properties. So we've lost all of that benefit. We've lost the benefit of the tree canopy slowing the fall of rain onto the ground. It helps ease that just a little bit. It's all gone now. So we have serious concerns that constructing a new home in this location is going to block the flow not only of surface water, but groundwater. To build a house at that spot, you're going to have to add a lot of fill to get it up out of the swamp. This historically was a swamp. Used to be a stream that flowed through this area. And you can see it on the houses immediately surrounding the subject. Fill was raised because they built the foundation up to try and keep out of the water, and added backfill around the house to level off the lot. You'd have to put a lot of fill, in my opinion, into this property to get a house and a driveway that would be out of the flood problem.
Okay.
So it's a difficult question, and we know as well that the city infrastructure for storm drainage at this location is way, way out of date. Way, way out of date.
Half the cities like that.
Exactly. It's a real terrible problem for the city to try and manage.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it now on the street. Any heavy rain, any thunderstorm, the street floods. We've got ambulances coming to and from the hospital trying to get through these flood waters. We have people who, as we know, tend to drive too fast sometimes, driving into this huge pond on Dufferin Avenue, and sooner or later something unfortunate may happen under those circumstances.
All right, is there any, thank you, Mr. Murray. Is there anybody else that wishes to comment on Dufferin Avenue? Nobody else? Mr. McCurdy, did you want to make any final comments?
I guess all I can say about what Stuart's points are is that the house at 150, which is right beside it, I lived in for over 10 years, and there's not a single drop of water in that basement. There is not a crack in the foundation, and I think using the technology that we have today, I don't have a concern about if at any time in the future there was a house put on that property that there would be any problems.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yes, Mrs. Cracken.
Okay, go ahead.
Greg, if the easement isn't secured from the second property, what's the city's stance on that? Like, can they, if this were approved at this committee, can the city still stop it? Or do they have any?
Yeah, through the chair, I guess what I can suggest is, first off, because staff haven't been able to formulate a fulsome list of conditions to recommend on this, at this point where the staff recommendation is that the report be received at this meeting and that we report back with a recommendation. In terms of ultimately approving a severance, if the committee, say, was to want to modify conditions of approval or something like that, that is up to the committee. If it was something where council was concerned that a condition should have been imposed that wasn't, council would have an opportunity to appeal the committee's decision. That's a bit of a nuclear option, but certainly it is something the Toronto Committee of Adjustment has a lot of decisions appealed. So I mean, there is precedent for that sort of thing. And I guess then further to that, there are also provisions under the Expropriations Act where the city could, separate from this process, look at opportunities to acquire an easement as well if need be. So yeah, a range of different considerations, I guess. But I ultimately, staff would come back with a recommendation for this committee.
Is there any discussion with the property owner at this time going on between the city and?
At this point, I would suggest there will be once staff has a direction that they're able to recommend pursuing. I think at that point we would certainly be reaching out to the owners.
Okay. If there's no further comment, my comments are, I think that with all these questions, the fact that we don't have an easement and we need to check on how this easement can possibly go forward and there's drainage, then I think our only option today would be to defer this until we get some more information from the staff on what direction maybe to go. Because that, if without that easement, then I think your hands are tied. So that's my thought. If there's no further comment, then
I move that we take
Defer.
it back to the city and the owner to discuss this further and bring a recommendation back to
Defer
the
it.
committee at that sometime in the future.
Okay, Jack, defer it. And you second it?
I'd like to make one quick comment. I would like to hear from the engineering department in the city of Belleville.
Well, that's going to,
Regarding the storm sewers and
Well,
water
that-
laterals and everything, not just storm drainage off the road into the field.
but part of that whole recommendation should be,
Yeah.
come from there. Yep. Okay. And that concludes that part of our meeting. Okay. Oh, sorry, all in favor, sorry. Thanks, Joe. Okay, confirmation of the minutes of our July 13th meeting. Moved by Joe, seconded by Jack. All in favor? Okay. Other business. Since the vice chair of this committee has resigned and moved on, then we need to again appoint a vice chair for the committee. And having said that, I would nominate Jack again to be the vice chair, if he wishes to accept. Anybody else? No? Okay. Okay, if there's no further nominations, then I guess all in favor of Jack being the vice chair? Thank you. Is there any other correspondence? No? And our next meeting is September 14th. Anything we should know? No? Okay. Okay, and an adjournment. Thank you, Jack. Hey, thank you, gentlemen. Aaron, do we have signatures required?